Elon Musk eliminating the members of this dark cult. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. But in the face of deception, silence is not an option. The words came not from a politician, not from a philosopher, but from Elon Musk himself, his voice calm, steady, and deliberate as the camera blinked red, recording his message to the world. He sat in his office at SpaceX headquarters, the screen behind him alive with constellations of data. His face was pale but determined, framed by the cold glow of countless monitors. For months he had remained silent, allowing rumors to swirl, allowing whispers to grow, but now, finally, he was ready to reveal what he had discovered. "I didn't ask for this role," Elon said, folding his hands together. "I only wanted to build, to innovate, to create a future where humanity could thrive on Earth and beyond. But some forces don't want humanity to thrive. Some forces want humanity to kneel." He paused, eyes darkening. "There is a cult, an ancient one, hidden in plain sight. They have manipulated governments, corporations, even entire cultures. Their roots dig deep into history, into secret societies, rituals, and bloodlines that span centuries. They are not a religion, not a fraternity. They are a system of control. They thrive on fear, division, and sacrifice. And now, they've come for me. But I won't bow." The word sent shivers across the millions who watched the live broadcast. It wasn't typical of Musk to dive into conspiracy, but his tone, his demeanor, there was no jest in him tonight. "This cult, this cabal of shadows," Elon continued, "has already infiltrated the highest levels of power. They silence leaders who resist them, manipulate markets to bend nations, and use fear to blind us. But the truth is simple: they're not invincible. They bleed. They fear exposure. And I have the means to tear the mask from their faces." A silence followed his words. Somewhere, far away, the members of that dark cult surely shifted uneasily. Then Elon leaned closer to the camera. His voice dropped. "And to the members watching, know this: I know your names. I know your rituals. I know the price you pay in the dark, thinking no one sees. But the light has come. And I am not alone." The screen cut to black. The world erupted. Some dismissed it as theatrics. Others called it the beginning of a new war. But for those who had already suspected, who had already sensed the hands pulling strings in the shadows, Elon's message was confirmation: someone powerful was willing to fight back. And in the silence of that blackout, plans were already moving. The first confrontation came quietly. It was in the underbelly of Los Angeles, beneath an abandoned subway line long erased from public maps. Elon's informants had traced the cult's gathering point there, beneath rusted iron and graffiti, behind walls no one had touched in decades. He didn't go alone. With him were 3 men and 2 women, all former operatives of agencies they could never name. Musk had hand-picked them, not for loyalty to him, but for loyalty to truth. They were soldiers who had seen too much, agents who had lost faith in the institutions they once served. Now, they stood with him, ready to face something that none of them could fully define. "This is it," whispered Cassandra, her voice low as she adjusted the weapon strapped across her chest. The coordinates match. Their meeting should be tonight. Elon nodded. He was no soldier, no assassin. He didn't pretend to be. But he had something else: technology, precision, and an unwillingness to be controlled. The tunnel was cold, the air heavy with mildew. They moved silently, flashlights off, guided only by thermal imaging displayed on a handheld device Musk himself had designed. And then, they saw them. Figures cloaked in black robes, faces hidden by masks carved with symbols older than nations. The cult was gathered in a circle, candles flickering around them, chanting in a language that had not been spoken in centuries. At the center of the circle was an altar, and on it, a ledger, bound in leather, sealed with wax, and marked with the emblem Musk had seen in his research. The emblem of control. Elon whispered, "That book holds their names." The operatives moved like shadows. Silencers whispered, and 2 cult members fell before they knew they were being hunted. Panic rippled through the others as Cassandra hurled a flash charge into the circle, flooding the chamber with blinding white light. "Move!" shouted one of the men, and the team surged forward. Elon stayed back, his eyes fixed on the ledger. One of the cultists, taller than the rest, with a mask shaped like a serpent, lunged for it, but before he could grasp it, Musk activated a drone that zipped from his pack, its taser rods crackling with electricity. The cultist collapsed, convulsing. The operatives secured the room with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, the cult gathering was broken, their chanting silenced. But Musk knew, this was only one cell of many. Still, as he picked up the ledger and broke the wax seal, he felt the gravity of the moment. Pages filled with names, dates, and locations stared back at him. Politicians, CEOs, judges, actors. Some names he recognized instantly, others would require investigation. But all were connected, all were bound to this darkness. Cassandra stood beside him, her eyes scanning the list. This isn't just a cult. This is the skeleton key to the entire system. Elon closed the book. His jaw tightened. Then we break the system. Word spread quickly. The cult moved faster now, desperate to silence him. Attacks on his networks began, cyber assaults meant to erase the evidence he held. Private jets followed him, cars lurked outside his compounds, and strangers approached his family with false smiles. But Elon was no stranger to being hunted. He fortified his defenses, not just with walls and guards, but with ideas, spreading fragments of the ledger to trusted allies worldwide, making sure no single strike could erase what he had uncovered. And then, he went on the offensive. The next gathering wasn't underground. It was hidden in the luxurious penthouse of a Manhattan skyscraper, masked as a charity gala. Billionaires in suits and gowns laughed, sipping wine under crystal chandeliers, but Musk knew better. He knew the signs, the gestures, the rings, the way they touched glasses in patterns that spoke in code. He entered not as a guest but as a storm. His team moved through service elevators, disabling cameras, cutting communications, while Elon himself walked through the front doors with nothing but confidence. Every eye turned. Whispers rose. They had not expected him here, not so boldly. But Elon Musk thrived on boldness. He raised a glass of champagne someone had thrust into his hand and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the marble hall, "shall we drop the pretense?" Gasps echoed. Faces paled. Somewhere, music faltered. "You've played your games in the shadows long enough," Elon continued. "But the world deserves to know who pulls the strings." And tonight, the strings snap. Before anyone could react, the screens along the penthouse walls flickered. They were supposed to display art, landscapes, digital installations, but instead, they now revealed the pages of the ledger. Every name, every detail, every crime catalogued in their own hand. The room froze. Elon's operatives emerged from hidden doors, weapons drawn. Cassandra's voice thundered, "The cult is over." But the members did not surrender quietly. Some drew concealed weapons, others shouted incantations in that same dead language, their eyes wild with fanatic fury. The gala turned battlefield in seconds. Elon ducked as a glass shattered near his head, his heart pounding but his focus unbroken. He wasn't here for violence, he was here for exposure. And as the world live-streamed the chaos, hacked by his own engineers, the truth spread like wildfire. The cult could kill him, but they could not kill the truth. This was only the beginning. Elon Musk had declared war, not with armies, not with nations, but with knowledge, technology, and the courage to face shadows that had ruled for centuries. And in the coming days, the world would see just how far the cult would go to protect itself. Elon Musk eliminating the members of this dark cult. The chandeliers trembled as if even the glass knew it was witnessing history. The Grand Manhattan penthouse, once a palace of indulgence and deception, had erupted into chaos. Shouts, gunfire, and the frantic shattering of glass echoed through the air as Musk's operatives moved like phantoms among the terrified crowd. The cult members had dropped their masks of civility. Their eyes burned with fanatic fury, their hands shaking not with fear but with desperation. For centuries they had operated in the shadows, behind veils of wealth and prestige. But tonight, Elon Musk had ripped those veils away before the world. He stood in the center of the storm, unarmed, a lone figure among wolves. Yet there was no hesitation in his stance, no doubt in his voice as he raised his hand and shouted over the mayhem, "Everyone is watching. Every camera, every feed, this is no longer your secret. The truth belongs to humanity." And he was right. His team had hijacked global networks, flooding screens across continents with live footage of the confrontation. The world was not only watching, it was awakening. Cassandra sprinted across the marble floor, her weapon raised as she covered Elon's flank. She was efficient, ruthless when she had to be, but her eyes never lost their clarity. "We need to move, now," she barked. Elon's gaze remained fixed on the walls, on the projected ledger that burned the names of the cult into eternity. "Not yet," he murmured. A cultist lunged at him, dagger gleaming in the dim light. But before the blade could reach its mark, a drone zipped from Elon's backpack, firing a concentrated pulse that sent the attacker sprawling, convulsing against the polished floor. The operatives tightened their perimeter. Each second was a gamble. reinforcements could arrive. The police, some of whom were cult puppets, could storm the building. But Musk was not leaving empty-handed. He strode to the center of the ballroom where a long dining table, covered in crystal glasses and silverware, had been overturned. Beneath it, he noticed the faint glow of circuitry. A hidden console. Elon knelt, his hands moving swiftly across the interface. His fingers weren't just trained for design and engineering, they were weapons in their own right. With a few precise commands, the hidden system bloomed to life. Streams of encrypted files surged onto his device. Ledgers older than the one he had recovered in Los Angeles. Maps. Ritual transcripts. Blackmail archives. Centuries of rot compressed into data. "This is it," Elon whispered. "Their backbone." But before he could transfer the last of it, the room grew darker. A low hum reverberated through the walls. Cassandra's eyes widened. EMP charge. The chandeliers flickered once, then exploded into silence. Every screen, every camera feed, every drone sputtered out. The room fell into near-total darkness, lit only by the eerie glow of candles still burning from the cult's twisted ceremony. The operatives cursed under their breath. Guns without optics in the dark were liabilities. The cultists, however, moved as if they had trained for this moment, their voices rising in unified chants that seemed to echo from the very marrow of the walls. Elon's device buzzed, half the files saved, half lost. He clenched his teeth but didn't falter. He knew they would stop at nothing to destroy evidence, to preserve their dominion. Then came the sound of heavy boots from the hallway. Not police. Not security. Something else. The doors burst open. A figure strode in, taller than most, his face hidden behind a mask forged of black steel. The mask was sculpted into the likeness of a ram, its horns curling upward, gleaming in the candlelight. His presence alone silenced the cultists mid-chant. The ram. Elon had seen references to him in the ledger, a name whispered among the highest echelons. Not a leader, not a puppet master, but an enforcer. A man who had turned entire uprisings to ash, who silenced nations with a single strike. "You should have stayed in your world of rockets and cars," the ram's voice thundered, distorted by the mask. "This is not your war." Elon straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. "It became my war the moment you tried to silence humanity." The ram tilted his head, almost amused. "You think technology can save you? You think light can reach where we've built our empire? You're a fool, Musk. You'll die in darkness." The operatives closed ranks, weapons raised, but Elon raised a hand. His voice was calm. "I've lived long enough in your shadow. Tonight, I choose otherwise." And with that, the standoff ignited. The ram moved with terrifying speed, disarming one operative with a brutal twist, hurling him across the room. Bullets sparked against his armored vest as if they were nothing more than raindrops. He was a wall of muscle and violence, cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. Cassandra fought like fire, striking with precision, but even she found herself driven back. Elon, however, was not focused on brute strength. He had anticipated this. From his pocket, he withdrew a small sphere no larger than a tennis ball. A prototype. Something he hadn't revealed to anyone, not even his team. He hurled it at the ram's feet. The sphere detonated, not with fire, but with a shockwave of electromagnetic pulses layered with sonic disruption. The ram staggered, his mask flickering with sparks, his balance faltering for the first time. "Now!" Elon shouted. The operatives surged. Cassandra's blade flashed, cutting through one of the mask straps. Another operative fired a point-blank round into the ram's shoulder, driving him back. For the first time, the cult's monster bled. The ram snarled, ripping the damaged mask away. His face was scarred, burned in places, but his eyes were void of rage and devotion. "You can cut me, you can wound me," he spat, "but you will never kill the cult. We are eternal." Elon's voice was cold, steady as stone. No system built on lies is eternal. Before the ram could strike again, Cassandra delivered the final blow. A blade plunged deep into his chest, and the enforcer collapsed, his breath rattling out in a final, defiant hiss. The room fell silent. The cultists, seeing their champion fall, faltered. Some fled into hidden passages. Others collapsed to their knees, their chants dissolving into sobs. Elon didn't gloat. He simply stood over the fallen figure, his expression unreadable. "Eternal," he whispered. "Nothing is eternal but the truth." They didn't linger. With what files they had salvaged, Elon and his team withdrew, vanishing into the city before the cult's reinforcements could arrive. The penthouse burned behind them, lit ablaze by desperate cultists who sought to erase evidence, to bury their shame beneath ash. But it was too late. The world had seen. And though the EMP had cut the final feed, fragments of the live stream were already circulating across the internet. The ledger, the names, the faces, they could not be contained. The cult was wounded, but far from dead. And Musk knew the real war was only beginning. 2 nights later, in a secure underground facility far from prying eyes, Elon gathered his team around a table. The salvaged files glowed on the screens, incomplete but powerful. "These are their strongholds," Cassandra said, tracing maps marked with crimson. "London, Geneva, Cairo, Tokyo. They're not just hiding, they're entrenched. And they're desperate now. Which makes them even more dangerous." Elon leaned back, his face etched with fatigue but lit with resolve. "Good. Desperate enemies make mistakes. And we'll be there when they do." "But what's the endgame?" one operative asked. "We can keep fighting cells, exposing leaders, but this cult is a hydra. Cut off one head, another grows. What's the real way to end it?" Elon's eyes darkened. He touched the screen, highlighting a symbol embedded in the files. It was the same emblem he had seen on the ledger, the same design carved into the walls of their underground lair. This isn't just a network. It's centralized. There's a council. A core. Find the core, and you collapse everything else. "And where's the core?" Cassandra pressed. Elon's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. We're going to Europe. The war was escalating. The cult's power was unraveling, its lies burning away under the harsh light of truth. But like any cornered predator, it would fight back with fangs bared. And Elon Musk, engineer, visionary, disruptor, was now something more. A hunter in a world of shadows. The world would soon learn what it meant when he declared war on the dark. The jet hummed quietly as it sliced through the midnight sky. Outside, the stars glittered like scattered diamonds, cold and distant, but inside the cabin, there was no luxury, only urgency. Elon Musk sat at the head of the table, his face illuminated by the pale glow of encrypted files projected in the air before him. His operatives were gathered close, the hum of the engines the only constant sound. Cassandra leaned forward, her sharp eyes locked on the data streaming across the display. "Geneva," she said finally, her voice steady. "All the threads lead there. The banks, the secret councils, the meetings hidden under the guise of diplomacy. It's not just one of their strongholds. It may be the stronghold." Elon nodded. "Switzerland has always played neutral. But neutrality has its price. And these people have bought it for centuries." The files recovered from the Manhattan Gala had been incomplete, fractured by the EMP strike, but patterns still emerged. Transactions that never touched the public eye. Shipments that were untraceable. Identities scrubbed from official records yet whispered in the ledger's pages. And at the center of it all, a gathering called the Circle of 12. It was more than rumor. It was the governing body of the cult, the so-called Eternal Council, the ones who claimed dominion over nations through fear and manipulation. "We find them," Elon said, "we end this." They landed under the cloak of night. Geneva, with its pristine streets and gleaming banks, wore its mask of order and civility proudly. But beneath that mask, in underground chambers where no law dared intrude, the Circle of 12 prepared to convene. Cassandra adjusted the strap of her tactical gear, her expression grim. "You realize if they know we're coming, they'll bring everything they have. This isn't like taking down a cell in an abandoned tunnel or crashing a gala. This is their core." Elon's reply was calm, almost detached. "Then they'll finally know what it feels like to face the future." The meeting place was not marked on any map. Beneath a centuries-old cathedral in the heart of the city lay tunnels carved long before Switzerland had declared neutrality. It was said the stones themselves held echoes of the rituals that had been conducted there. Elon's team infiltrated quietly, bypassing security systems not with brute force but with precision code Elon had written during the flight. Cameras blinked out one by one. Sensors fell silent. For a moment, the cult was blind. But silence itself can be a trap. As they descended deeper, the air grew colder. Torches burned in iron sconces, flickering shadows across the walls. Strange symbols carved into stone twisted in the light, some recognizable from the ledger, others older, almost primal. Cassandra muttered under her breath, "They don't just worship power, they breathe it." At the end of the tunnel, they reached an iron door engraved with the emblem that haunted them all. Elon placed his hand on the surface, feeling the vibrations beneath. It wasn't just a door. It was a mechanism, pulsing faintly with energy. He withdrew a small device from his pack, a sensor tuned to frequencies most would never think to search for. Numbers spiked across the display. "It's biometric," Elon whispered. "It reads more than fingerprints. It reads intent. Fear. Devotion." "And how exactly do we get past that?" one of the operatives asked. Elon's eyes gleamed faintly in the torchlight. "By giving it something it doesn't understand." He reprogrammed the sensor, feeding it not biometric signatures but raw equations, cascading algorithms that pulsed like a living frequency. The door trembled. Then, with a groan that echoed through the chamber, it opened. What lay beyond froze them all for a heartbeat. A vast underground hall stretched into the darkness, its ceiling disappearing into shadows. At its center, a circular stone dais was surrounded by 12 thrones, each carved from black granite, towering and foreboding. And seated upon those thrones were figures cloaked in darkness. Masks of gold, silver, bone, and obsidian covered their faces, each mask crafted into the likeness of beasts, birds, and ancient deities. They sat in silence, but their presence alone was suffocating. The Circle of 12. Elon stepped forward. His voice, though quiet, carried across the hall. "You hide in shadows, cloaked in symbols, worshipping control as if it were divine. But you're not gods. You're parasites. And parasites can be removed." The masked figures stirred. One, wearing the mask of an owl, spoke in a voice that was both male and female, distorted by something unseen. "You are bold, Musk. Bolder than most. But boldness is not wisdom. You've spilled our secrets, torn at our edges. And yet you walk willingly into our heart." Elon's gaze did not falter. "I came because hearts can stop beating." The circle rose as one, their movements synchronized, their shadows merging into a single vast shape that seemed to writhe against the walls. Candles extinguished one by one, leaving only the glow of the dais. "You cannot eliminate what has lived for centuries," the owl intoned. "We are the eternal spine of civilization. Kings, emperors, presidents, all have bent the knee. And you? You are a man who makes cars." Elon almost smiled. "Cars that drive themselves. Rockets that land themselves. Ideas that terrify you. Because I build the future while you cling to the past." The air grew heavy. The circle began to chant, their voices weaving together in a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the stone. The walls themselves seemed to pulse. From the shadows behind the thrones, figures emerged, guards draped in armor inscribed with runes, their eyes blank as though possessed. Cassandra raised her weapon. "We're outnumbered 10-1. Elon's reply was calm, steady. "Then we'll fight 10 times harder." The operatives spread out, weapons drawn. The guards surged forward, blades flashing in the dim light. The clash was immediate and brutal. But Elon wasn't there to match them blow for blow. While his team held the line, he pulled a cylindrical device from his pack, a prototype never before tested outside simulation. He twisted the base, and the cylinder expanded into a sphere of light, hovering above his palm. The chanting of the circle faltered as the sphere began to pulse. "What is this?" demanded the owl. Elon's voice was steel. "A mirror. You've hidden in shadows for centuries. But what happens when shadows are exposed to light?" He hurled the sphere into the center of the dais. It detonated, not with fire or noise, but with illumination. Pure, blinding light erupted, flooding every corner of the chamber. The masked figures reeled as the light seared through their cloaks, exposing faces long hidden. Some were politicians the world still revered. Some were tycoons who controlled entire industries. Others were strangers, but their eyes betrayed centuries of corruption. The operatives froze for only a moment. Seeing the faces of the so-called eternal shattered the illusion. They were flesh and blood, no more divine than the soldiers who served them. "Exposed," Elon whispered. The circle of 12 howled as though the light itself burned their very souls. The guards faltered, their trance broken, some collapsing entirely. Cassandra pressed forward, striking one of the masked leaders across the dais. The figure fell, mask shattering against the stone. Blood pooled. 1 down. 11 to go. But the circle did not surrender. Even wounded, even exposed, they fought like cornered beasts, their desperation more dangerous than their power. The hall became a battlefield of shadows and light. Operatives clashed with guards, blades against bullets, fists against fire. Musk, unarmed, moved with clarity of purpose, retrieving fragments of data from consoles hidden beneath the dais. Each fragment was another nail in the coffin of the cult, evidence that could topple empires. And through it all, he never wavered. Because this was no longer just survival. It was revolution. By the time the last echoes of battle faded, the hall was drenched in silence. Half the circle lay dead. The rest had fled through secret passages, scattering like roaches into the dark. Elon stood on the dais, his chest heaving, his clothes torn, but his eyes still bright with determination. Cassandra joined him, blood streaked across her cheek, her blade slick but steady. "We didn't kill them all," she said quietly. "We didn't need to," Elon replied. He held up the device loaded with the stolen data. "The world will." Above them, dawn broke over Geneva. The sun rose golden against the mountains, casting light across a city that had no idea of the war waged beneath its streets. For centuries, the cult had thrived because no one dared to expose it. But now the veil was torn. Their leaders unmasked. Their secrets recorded. Their foundation cracked. And Elon Musk, the man who had come to build futures in space, was now reshaping the future on Earth. The hunt was not over. The circle still lived. The cult still breathed. But for the first time, they bled. And Elon intended to finish what he had begun. The dawn over Geneva painted the sky in soft gold, but inside the safe house where Elon Musk and his team had retreated, the air was heavy with exhaustion and adrenaline. No one spoke at first. They sat around a table cluttered with maps, fragments of the ledger, and hard drives glowing faintly with stolen data. Cassandra broke the silence. "We hurt them. Badly. Half the circle is gone, their secrets are bleeding into the world. But you know what this means, don't you? They'll retaliate. Harder than ever. Elon leaned back, his eyes fixed on the glowing files. His voice was quiet, measured, but filled with that strange certainty that had always carried him through impossible ventures. They've lived off fear for centuries. Fear is their currency. But now they're afraid. And that changes everything. One of the operatives rubbed his temples. We can't outgun them forever. They'll throw entire governments at us if they have to. What's our plan when the wolves come from every side? Elon turned toward the wall, where one of his prototypes, a compact communications satellite interface, hummed softly. He had been working on it secretly, long before this war began. At first, it had been designed to bring free internet access to corners of the globe where control was strongest. Now, it had another purpose. The plan, Elon said slowly, is to make them fight in daylight. We don't stay in the shadows. We expose them fully. We turn the entire world into a mirror. If every citizen can see what we've seen, if they know who pulls their strings, then the cult won't have anywhere left to hide. Cassandra studied him. You're talking about more than leaks. You're talking about total exposure. Elon nodded. The circle thrives because people can't see the system. Let's make the system impossible to ignore. That night, the safe house shook with the roar of an explosion. The windows shattered inward, flames licking the walls as alarms wailed. The cult's retaliation had come faster than anyone expected. Cassandra shouted orders, dragging the operatives toward the emergency exit. Elon grabbed the drives and pressed them to his chest, refusing to let the data burn. They burst into the cold streets of Geneva, smoke curling into the sky behind them. Dark vehicles screeched around corners, black-clad men spilling out with weapons raised. The cult wasn't subtle anymore, they wanted Musk's head, and they didn't care who saw. Gunfire erupted. Cassandra pulled Elon behind a stone barrier, returning fire with brutal precision. One operative fell, a scream cut short by the chaos. Another dragged him into cover, blood trailing across the cobblestones. Elon's mind raced. He wasn't built for battle, but his inventions were. He reached into his pack, pulling out a slim metal device that looked unremarkable, until he snapped it open. Twin blades of blue-white plasma arced between its ends, a prototype designed for cutting through steel. Tonight, it would cut through more than that. He rose just as a cult soldier charged forward. With a swing of the plasma tool, Elon severed the weapon from the man's hands, the smell of scorched metal filling the air. The soldier staggered back, shocked long enough for Cassandra to drop him with a clean shot. They sprinted through the maze of alleys, gunfire echoing behind them. Elon's lungs burned, his muscles ached, but he didn't stop. The drives thudded against his chest with every step. The future was in his arms, and he couldn't let it fall. Finally, they reached the river. Cassandra shoved Elon toward a waiting boat hidden beneath a bridge. "Go," she shouted. "We'll hold them off." Elon froze. "Not without you." She gave him a look that was equal parts fire and steel. "This isn't about me." This is about all of us. Get that data out, Elon. Show the world. That's how we win. The words cut deep, but he knew she was right. With a final nod, he leapt into the boat, engines roaring as he sped into the darkness. Behind him, gunfire and screams tore through the night, but ahead of him stretched the open river, a path toward survival, toward revelation. Days later, Elon emerged again. This time not in secret, not from the shadows. He stood on a global broadcast platform, his face tired, his clothes simple, but his eyes burning with unshakable conviction. "They tried to silence me," he said. "They tried to bury the truth under fire and fear. But fear is no longer theirs to wield. The Circle of 12 is real. Their names, their crimes, their manipulations, I've seen them. And now, so will you." Screens across the world flickered to life, displaying faces long thought untouchable. World leaders, corporate giants, cultural icons, exposed as part of the cult. The evidence was undeniable, the files irrefutable. The world gasped. Nations reeled. Trust shattered. And for the first time, the cult could not retreat into denial. Their secrets were burned into the daylight. But the cult was not finished. Far away, in a fortress hidden in the mountains, the surviving members of the circle gathered. Their masks were gone, their faces bare, twisted with rage and desperation. The owl slammed a fist against the table. "He's turned the world against us. Centuries of power, undone in weeks by a man who builds toys for the masses." Another, their voice low and venomous, hissed, "Not undone. Not yet. We still hold the root. He doesn't know. He cannot know." The owl's gaze darkened. "Then we release it. If Musk wants war, we will give him one that scorches the earth itself." And with that, they set into motion a plan that had been dormant for generations, a plan that would not just silence Elon Musk, but plunge the entire world into chaos. Far from their fortress, Elon studied the faces of billions who had seen the truth. He knew this wasn't the end. The cult would not die quietly. Their retaliation would be catastrophic, desperate, final. But he also knew something else. They had lost their invisibility. The fight ahead would be brutal. It would cost more lives, more sacrifices. Yet Elon Musk stood resolute, his voice calm but carrying like thunder, "They've thrived in the dark. Now they will die in the light." The storm began without warning. Across the globe, systems that had been trusted for decades suddenly turned against the people who relied on them. Power grids collapsed in synchronized blackouts, satellites went blind, hospitals were struck by digital intrusions that shut down life-saving machines. Air traffic control towers screamed with chaos as planes were diverted into ghost signals, pilots begging for guidance that never came. The Circle had unleashed their root weapon. A lattice of code older than most nations, buried deep in the infrastructure of the world itself. It was not just a virus, it was a shadow program woven into the very veins of civilization, waiting for the cult to whisper the command that woke it. Billions were thrown into fear. Cities plunged into darkness, panic flooding the streets as food chains snapped, banks dissolved into static, and every screen whispered the same message in a distorted, taunting voice: "You thought the truth would set you free. Now the truth will bury you." In a hidden hangar beneath the mountains, Elon Musk stared at the streams of collapsing data pouring across his monitors. His team had worked night and day since Geneva, building redundancies, sealing networks, preparing for retaliation. But even they hadn't anticipated this. Cassandra's voice crackled through the comms from another bunker. "They've gone scorched earth. They don't care about power anymore, they only care about control through destruction." Elon's jaw clenched. "They're willing to burn the world just to keep it." He turned toward the prototype humming in the corner of the hangar, a small spacecraft, sleek, unfinished, but alive with potential. Starlink's network had been crippled, but not destroyed. Somewhere in the chaos, fragments of connection still survived. If he could get above the interference, if he could patch into the sky directly, there was still a chance. Not to fight the code. To rewrite it. "Prep the ship," Elon ordered. "We take the fight to orbit." The launch was improvised, reckless, and nearly suicidal. The ship was not meant for combat, not meant for immediate flight. But Musk had lived his life by breaking rules, bending limits, daring the impossible until it bent with him. The night sky split open as the vessel clawed upward, engine screaming, fire carving through the darkness. The cult's network fought back immediately, redirecting orbital debris, drones, even compromised satellites into the ship's path. Inside the cockpit, Elon gripped the controls tighter than he ever had. Sparks showered from panels, alarms blared, but his voice stayed steady. "Hold, hold, not yet." He threaded the craft between tumbling satellites, weaving through clouds of shrapnel, the earth glowing beneath him like a wounded jewel. Finally, he broke free into the silent vastness of orbit. And there, waiting like a predator, was the Circle's fortress in the sky. A station older than the public had ever known, disguised for decades as a derelict relic. Its shape was jagged, unnatural, a cathedral of steel and shadow circling above humanity's reach. And within it, the root core pulsed, the heart of the cult's control. Elon whispered, almost to himself, "So this is where you've been hiding." The docking was not stealthy. The cult knew he was there. They wanted him to come. Inside the station, the corridors were long and cold, lined with statues of faceless figures, monuments to fear, carved by hands that believed themselves eternal. His footsteps echoed as he advanced, carrying nothing but the drive of rewritten code and the plasma cutter strapped to his side. And then, the owl stepped out of the shadows. No mask this time. The face was older, worn, but eyes sharp with fanatic light. "You can't win, Musk. You think exposing us destroyed us? You've only made us desperate. And desperation makes us gods." Elon's voice was calm, but unyielding. "You've built your empire on illusions. But I've built mine on truth. And truth doesn't break as easily as you think." The owl smiled coldly. "Then step into the light with me. Let's see which of us burns." The duel was not of fists alone. All around them, the station shuddered as the cult unleashed their root code directly into Elon's systems. His neural link screamed with static, visions of collapse flooding his mind, every blackout, every dying hospital, every falling plane. They wanted to drown him in the weight of humanity's suffering. But Elon had prepared. His rewritten code pulsed back through the network, sparks of light breaking the shadows apart. Every time the cult's root tightened its grip, his algorithm tore another thread loose, redirecting power back to the people. The plasma cutter hissed as steel met steel, Musk parrying the owl's blade in a shower of sparks. Their movements clashed in rhythm with the code war raging through the system, each blow mirrored by a surge of digital light and darkness. And in the midst of the battle, Musk felt something deeper, voices rising. Not just his team. Not just allies. Millions of ordinary people, connecting through the fragments of restored signal, feeding their will, their defiance, into the network. They weren't soldiers, but they were awake now. And the circle had no weapon against a world that refused to sleep. The final strike came as both men clashed by the core itself, its heartbeat pulsing like thunder. Elon drove the plasma cutter into the console, his rewritten code flooding the station's systems. The owl screamed as light engulfed him, the shadows unraveling, centuries of secrecy collapsing in a single surge of brilliance. The core shattered. And for the first time in history, the Circle of 12 ceased to exist. As the wreckage of the cult's fortress burned in orbit, Elon's ship drifted back toward Earth. His body was battered, his mind scarred by the visions of war, but his eyes still burned with fire. The world below was still wounded, still struggling in the aftermath of the blackout. But the shadows had been lifted. The truth was out. The cult was gone. And humanity was free to choose its path without invisible chains. Elon Musk's voice carried once more in a broadcast, raw but resolute. They tried to own the future. They tried to chain the world to their darkness. But the future belongs to the people. And no cult, no shadow, no empire will ever own that again. The earth welcomed him back not with celebration, but with silence. Elon's capsule landed in a barren desert, far from any city. The dust rose in golden plumes, swirling like ghosts of a past that had just been buried. When he stepped out, his suit scorched, his face lined with exhaustion, he felt the stillness of a world holding its breath. The cult was gone. But so was the illusion of order. Across nations, the truth had detonated like a bomb. Leaders once thought untouchable were revealed as puppets of the circle. Banks crumbled under exposure. Governments fractured overnight. And ordinary people, millions, billions, stared into a future they could not recognize. Cassandra's voice finally reached him through a restored comm link. You did it. The circle is no more. Elon looked across the horizon, his voice steady but heavy. No, we did it. Humanity did. But now comes the harder part. Rebuilding without them. The days that followed were chaos. Markets collapsed. Old institutions tried to cling to power but were torn apart by a public that no longer trusted their chains. Communities began to form their own networks, their own alliances, rising from the ashes of broken systems. Musk's Starlink became the backbone of a new world, free, open, decentralized. Not controlled by one hand, but shared by many. Elon did not lead with speeches of triumph. Instead, he worked in silence, engineering tools that let farmers track their crops without middlemen, gave villages clean energy, gave cities transparency in systems once veiled by corruption. His dream was no longer just Mars, it was Earth itself, healed and unshackled. Cassandra, scarred but alive, rejoined him. Together, they traveled through town.